Okay, so in this video, I will be pitting the all-new Apple iPad Air 5 here against its own sibling, the iPad 9 here. Let's go ahead and jump in. Now, first things first, and this is going to be a corny joke. This is not going to be an apple-to-apple comparison. Get it? Apple to apple. I told you it was going to be corny. But anyway, so these play in different categories, right? So you would look at this as more of a mid-range. The iPad Air here would be kind of a mid-range coming from Apple. And this would be more of the budget one, still coming from Apple. But in my experience, well, at least my user experience using these along with the iPad Pro 11 inches, I feel most people, especially students, people running small businesses, things like that, will only need the power offered by the Apple iPad 9 here. They don't necessarily need the M1 here. Of course, there are tons of people out there who will need the M1 power that is loaded in this tablet here. Now, the reason I'm saying that most people only need this is because I feel this provides top level value, especially coming from Apple. Some places are selling this for $299. The regular MSRP is $330, which, by the way, is a bargain. It's a bargain based off of what Apple was able to include in this little package this time around. You have the base 64 gigs of internal storage. Granted, that's still not a lot, especially for an iPad, right? Because you don't have the ability to expand that storage, that internal storage. But 64 gigs of base internal storage, and then you have 3 gigs of RAM. The platform here is an Apple A13 Bionic chip, which is a very, very powerful chipset, and that actually rivals with a lot of Android flagship tablets, right? Just to tell you, this is a budget tablet from Apple, but yet, in terms of raw power, it rivals the same level of power offered on a lot of Android tablets there. Now, on the other hand, what you have here is the iPad Air, right? This is the M1 iPad Air 5. That is a lot of power, especially for a tablet that's limited to 64 gigs of internal storage, and you have 8 gigs of RAM here. At this point, this is not even a mid-range tablet anymore. This is a productivity tablet. This is supposed to be a pro tablet, right? Sure, there are some limitation between the M1 that you find here and the M1 that you find on the iPad Pro, but this guy here is a monster. I sometimes feel like they shouldn't even have the Pro model or the Pro series, because you pretty much get pro level performance here. If the budget one is already a rival in terms of performance to a lot of Android tablets out there, a lot of flagship Android tablets there, you would only imagine what a pro tablet from iPad would be like in terms, again, of raw power. And I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I always need to emphasize that we are talking strictly about raw power. When it comes down to multitasking and being productive, obviously that's a different ball game, and Android, specifically Samsung tablets, they just shine in that area. But anyway, so let's jump back here and talk about just styluses and get this out of the way. So either one of these will support a stylus, right? So the iPad Air 5 here does support the Apple Pencil 2nd gen, whereas the iPad 9 supports the 1st gen. My only, gripe with any of the Apple tablets supporting their Pencil is just the sound that it makes when you're writing. I don't like that, and I always say it. I know some people like it, but I personally do not enjoy it. I prefer a more natural, a more quiet and smoother feel and, to the touch. And unfortunately, Apple doesn't offer that. The next thing to share here is that these will be supported for at least 5 years, right? So the iPad 9 here dropped in September of 2021, and this one here dropped in March, I believe, or was it April of 2022. So they will be supported for up to 5 years. That's one of the main things that attract most people to Apple tablets, just the support, right? Because Apple is offering that support of minimum 5 years with any of their tablets. Now, in terms of user experience, you would essentially be experiencing the same stuff. I call these big iPhones, simply because whether you're using this or you're using that, it's the same icons. You can customize it essentially the same way. Apple has a very uniform way of, structuring the way the tablet works, right? And that, instills some level of just reliability that people absolutely love about Apple devices. It's a very, very consumer-focused, device, or like they make a very consumer focused software, right? So user experience would generally be the same throughout. Now, some of the new stuff that you would get would be like that front facing camera that you have here. You have the same front facing camera here, 12 megapixel with center stage that supports center stage. And that's that option or that feature where, as you are video calling or chatting with someone, you can move, to the side, and the camera would just kind of track you in there and adjust to keep you within the frame. And as you have more people joining the call, it would, go wide so that everyone is included in the call. I think that's a very neat feature, especially in this, era of Zoom calls, right? Video calling. A lot of people do that nowadays. Now on the back here, you just have your typical 8 megapixel camera, not a lot going up on there, right? So it's good for scanning documents and things like that, but nothing really major there. You're not going to see the best picture. I always advise people, if you need to take pictures using the main camera on your tablet, just go ahead and use your phone. But anyway, so that's what's going on there. And on the iPad Air 5 here on the back there, you also do have a camera that is not bad at all. It's a 12 megapixel camera on the back as well, and it's pretty decent shots. But then again, if you need to be taking pictures or videos and things like that, I bet you your phone would take better pictures than this in most cases. Now, in terms of performance, obviously the M1 chip found here will offer you a much better performance than what you would find on the iPad 9 here. But for a lot of people, a lot of just regular people, they don't need all of that power, right? So if you could save, you could pay almost half the money to get this one, I would say just go ahead and grab yourself an iPad 9. But anyway, so in terms of user experience, you will get a much more powerful chipset here that's going to offer you, something a lot better in terms of, let's say if you rendering videos, for example, right? Rendering videos be much better on here than it would be here. Otherwise, day-to-day tasks essentially the same. Navigating the internet, checking your emails, doing regular stuff, pretty much the same. Now, when it goes down to heavier games, right, you will get a better handle with the iPad Air here. So the iPad Air here will handle it better, or will handle better, heavier games better than the iPad 9. But even with the iPad 9, when you get to heavy games, they still play so well that sometimes you may not even really notice the difference, right? And that's just that. Now, let's talk about physical features here. What you have with the iPad 9 here is a headphone jack that is not available on the iPad Air. You do have a dual speaker setup. Unfortunately, it's set up at the bottom here. If you have large hands like I do here, if you hold your tablet like this, obviously the sound is going to be, or the speakers are going to be covered, so the sound coming out will be muffled. And then of course you do have just the typical power button, volume rocker there, same thing you will get here, and you do have a lightning port here, so slow data transfer. That's a very not so good thing about this. Slow data transfer here. On here, on the other hand, you will get a USB Type-C port, right? Faster data transfer, you get quad speaker setup, you get 2 speakers technically, but it's a quad setup. So even if you were holding it this way and you're covering the bottom speakers or the bottom grills, you'll still get sound coming out, the other 2 at the top there. So that's very nice to have there. As I mentioned, you don't have a headphone jack here. You do have your power button, volume rocker. The power button also combos as a fingerprint sensor, right? So it's a physical fingerprint sensor that works extremely well. You do have a physical fingerprint sensor on the iPad 9 as well. It works very, very well. I actually even feel like it works better than the physical fingerprint sensor on here, and I feel like it's more convenient. It's in a more convenient spot here at the bottom of the tablet there. And of course, we can't do a comparison between these two without talking about battery, right? So far, it just seems like the battery on the iPad Air 5 here lasts longer than that of the iPad 9. And that is, of course, if you consider the fact that I bought my iPad 9 when it came out, right? So way back in September. So by the time I bought this guy, the iPad Air 5, I had been using my iPad 9 for a number of months. So it had been degrading as time went by, right? So it only makes sense that this guy would last longer. In either case, you should be seeing a full day of battery, whether you go for the iPad 9 or the iPad Air 5 here. Now, let's talk quickly about just user experience when it comes down to, Pencil. The iPad 9 supports, as I mentioned earlier, the Apple Pencil first generation. It works well. You don't have any crazy extra features. The iPad Air 5, on the other hand, does support the Apple Pencil second generation, same as the iPad Pro, right? So here it feels better, has more of a soft touch to it, and it feels a little bit more natural to the hand compared to what you have with the first gen of the pencil here, and it works better. I personally prefer this guy here when it comes down to taking down notes and doing all of that extra stuff. Now, if you are a student, you don't necessarily need to go for the iPad Air 5 here, and the reason I'm saying this is because this seems to be extremely popular among students, especially college students. The Air 5 here, simply because of the different colors and the fact that it's super powerful and it's cool looking. It looks really nice. If you don't mind the old legacy look here, go for the iPad 9 here and then upgrade the internal storage. Meaning, rather than going for the 64 gigs that you will get with the Air 5 here, why don't you just pick up the regular iPad 9 here and go for the 256 gigs of internal storage. And that's for most students. Obviously, if you work or if you are going to school for video editing or you're going to be doing some level of media work, just go ahead and grab the iPad Air in that case, because you'll be tapping into all of that crazy extra power that is offered by the M1 chip, loaded on this device here. That's just my take. Now, it's really hard for me to be like, strictly go for this. Obviously, if price is not an issue, if you have to choose between these two and price is not an issue, just get yourself the latest, which in this case would be the iPad Air 5 here, right? But if you want more value, I personally feel like this guy here, the iPad 9, offers a lot more. You get a lot more out of your dollar when compared to the $600 that you'll be paying for the iPad Air 5 here. That's just my take. In fact, in a lot of cases, I'd advise people to go for an iPad Pro 11 inches as opposed to the iPad Air 5 here, with 256 gigs. So let's say if you buy this, 64 gigs is not a lot. And let's say you realize that and you want to go for the 256 gigs of internal storage. It would make more sense for you to pick up an iPad Pro, an M1 iPad Pro 11 inches with 128 gigs of internal storage by adding just, like $50 and picking that up rather than grabbing an iPad Air 5 here with 256 gigs. And that's just my take when it comes out to choosing between these two tablets. What is your take on here? Which one would you go for? Do you own either one of these two tablets? Share your experience. Let me know how you like it. Share that in the comment section. I will catch you in the comment section. Make sure to like, share this video if you know anyone who will be interested. I will catch you in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe also, just because before I forget. Make sure to subscribe. I'm going to catch you in the comment section. I'm also going to catch you in the next video. Up until that next video, of course, as always, stay safe out there.